Now, what is your biggest fear? Spiders? The dark? Commitment, maybe. Understandably, though, for many, it's the thought of someone they love getting ill. In the UK in 2024, there's nothing scarier right now than a health issue. Rishi Sunak, by his own admission, has failed on his promise to fix the NHS, and we all suffer the consequences.
NHS waiting lists.
We have not made enough progress.
You failed on that pledge.
Yes.
Because you said NHS waiting lists will fall. In fact, they are slightly coming down now, but the waiting list is still nearly 500,000 more than it was at the start of last year. You accept that?
Yes, and we all know the reasons for that. What I would say to people is, look, we've invested record amounts in the NHS, more doctors, more nurses, more scanners. All these things mean that the NHS is doing more today than it ever has been, but industrial action has had an impact, and that's why we've been working very hard to bring down the people waiting.
Well, Prime Minister, let's have a look at those figures. 7.5 million people in this country are waiting to be treated. You heard that correctly. More than 1 million appointments were cancelled last year. Doctors went missing for 38 days over pay and working conditions. It's a grim list. Now, when it matters, when your life is in danger, the NHS is supposed to be our saviour. World-beating, they tell us. But is it? Cancer care and accident and emergency are often held up as examples of its excellence. But this just is no longer the case. We've got the highest cancer death rates out of any country in the G7. And last month, 45,000 people waited in A&E for more than 12 hours before seeing a doctor. I was one of them. This goes way beyond a few shocking headline statistics. Every single step of the healthcare in this country is broken. That 8 a.m. scramble for a GP appointment. If you're lucky, you might get a phone call in 2 weeks from a doctor you've never ever met. The 6-month waiting for a hospital referral. And then the 18 months or even 2-year wait for that much needed operation. Now, not long ago, of course, if you were pushy enough, if you knew the right way to speak or were friends with a doctor, you knew the person to send your complaint letter to and had time to pester, you might just get around the failing system and get looked after. But now even the sharpest elbowed middle-class mum can't find a workaround. Most people now with a bit of spare cash simply go private. If it costs 60 quid for a video call with an NHS doctor, but via some Silicon Valley app, then so be it. The problems are plentiful. We now export well-trained doctors at an alarming rate to other countries, or we simply lose them to the private sector and have to draft in foreign workers to plug the gaps. Our healthcare system really is broken. And politicians tinker with healthcare at their peril. But our treasured NHS has been insulated from criticism for too long. And it's partly that culture of silence that has allowed this situation to deteriorate to where we are now. Let's not forget, by the way, the entire system comes at a cost, an eye-watering 181.7 billion a year. It's not surprising, therefore, that just 1 in 4 people are satisfied with NHS treatment and delivery. To use a 2024 phrase for a 2024 problem, we're trapped in a toxic relationship with our healthcare system. It's a simple question, but with many answers, I'm sure. But cutting to the chase, are you satisfied with the NHS? And here's a further question. Would you pay more on your tax to fund it properly? Well, open the lines on this one now, 0344 499 1000. You can text 87222, or, of course, on the socials at TalkTV. I'm delighted now to be joined by journalist and founder of Simple Politics. Tatton Spiller is with us to chew over this and a few other stories. Tatton, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you. I mean, this one, since we've all been alive, this merry-go-round of the NHS debate has always been there. Do we pay more money? Every government, including this one, will say, actually, if you look at the books, we are paying more, putting more into it than we've ever put into it. And yet we still have this backlog. We still have a broken system. And there's no doubt about it, when the figures show that many people are unsatisfied, we really have got a problem here.
We've got a massive problem. But, do you know what, before we get into the problems, I want to talk about the good stuff. Because 2 years ago, I got sepsis and the ambulance just came and blue-lit me to the hospital. There's no wait for the ICU. And the doctors and nurses in the ICU saved my life 2 years ago.
Yep.
Right? I'm on bonus time right now. I'm on bonus time.
Because of that?
Because of that.
Because of what happened.
And millions and millions and millions of people are alive right now because of the treatment they've got in the NHS in the last few years.
That is true.
And many people are in hospital right now getting excellent care because of the good work of the NHS. So we can talk about the problems. I wanted to start off with
the good stuff.
There's stuff.
But of course, the arguments would always be, well, that's true, and I've got some examples exactly as you've just quoted of some real excellent care. The argument goes that there would be many more people with a positive outcome if we had a system that wasn't broken.
So everyone agrees. Jeremy Hunt says that we need to reform. He's put in $4 billion, I think, on to make it better. Wes Streeting, the Labour Health Secretary, says that he's not going to pour money in. He's going to reform it from the inside. That 180 billion you're talking about is, people seem to agree it should be enough. And in the current system, if you got 20 billion more and made it 200 billion, would it make any difference?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about funding. Now, a lot of people feel that it's being drained by people. We haven't got the money in there. But sometimes it's hard. A new machine might cost £1 million, £2 million.
True.
And if we don't have the machines now, if it's a brand new machine, then suddenly the government has to pay however many trusts need these machines. So to be better, we need to pay more.
And it's only when you sit in a hospital. I mentioned about being in A&E about a month or so ago, and that long wait. And when you're sitting there, you're looking around at everything, every light bulb that's on all day long, every pair of rubber gloves, the sanitising liquid, the amount of personnel. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're still seeing, it's obviously fewer staff around, but there's still a lot of staff around. You're thinking, wow, every hospital. This is just one little corner of a big hospital I'm talking about here. And it's just one location of all the ones around the UK. And that's just the running costs. I mean, these things cost an arm and a leg. I mean, we get that. I think the biggest problem seems to be a shortage of staff, a shortage of doctors, a shortage of nurses. There are tens of thousands of vacancies and we can't fill them fast enough.
And that might be about funding. But you're talking about the light bulbs. If your procurement means you're paying £15 for a light bulb, or the cost of changing it costs £15, then you haven't got the money for the doctors.
Yes.
And so they're on strike, and that money could be, if you wanted to pay them the full amount they asked, or enough to bring them back, that money could easily be saved. Everybody agrees that there is wastage within the system, and that was something that specifically this survey found, that people were frustrated with the system. And I think it found that roughly 40% would be happy to pay more tax for the NHS.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting
wouldn't.
bit, isn't it? If you did pay more tax, as you rightly said, I mean, it's not just the money, it's the sort of the system itself. But do you change that if Wes Streeting, who's in all likelihood going to be the next health secretary, the first Labour health secretary of the next government, is he going to do the kind of Blair thing? We just bring in some more private sector into this? That's a swear word for many people. We'll be talking to a GP a little later who will not be happy to hear that. We'll also talk to one of the authors of this report. But some argue, well, that's the only way. That's the only way you can, at least initially, begin the process of sorting it out.